It's about really concealment in a very general way. So we wanted to study in a very general sense, what's the consequence of having to be constantly attending to something you don't want to reveal. So that could be something very personal about yourself, like your sexual orientation. But we also wanted to show that the types of things we study would apply even in more mundane contexts, when people were just not supposed to reveal a few specified words, even words that didn't have clear personal import. And then we wanted to show what are the types of consequences that might happen, especially things that might be relevant in the workplace if people are trying to conceal information in the context of a conversation or an interview. A lot of the things that marketing researchers are interested in when it comes to this line of work is there's a lot of things that ordinary consumers have to do to exercise self-control. So in consumer behavior, oftentimes it's studying the willpower we have to exercise to go for that apple instead of that piece of cake. These are quite fun experiments to run. They involve a lot of theatrics, which is what some of the more fun psychology experiments do. So we had two participants that would come into the lab at a time, but unbeknownst to one of the participants, who was actually the real participant, the other one was hired by us, by the experimenters, and just pretended to be a participant. So from the vantage point of the real participant, they think that they're here for a study in which they're going to be interviewed, but we tell them that actually we're just interested in what the other person remembers that you say. But this is just a cover story so that it's not strange that we ask them in some conditions to conceal certain information about themselves. So in most of our studies, we ask participants, a random half of participants, to conceal their sexual orientation when they answer the interview questions. For some questions, that's relatively easy to do. We might ask them, what do you like about Berkeley compared to other places you've lived? Whereas for other questions, that becomes more difficult. So if we ask, what's your ideal dating partner? What might you do on an ideal first date? So these are cases in which perhaps mimicking in the real world when people are talking about their personal lives, that people have to exert more effort in terms of monitoring to make sure that they don't slip up and reveal this information. After this interview, participants think that that part of the study is over, but actually we take them to a second task that we're very interested in how their interview affected how they perform on. So and again, the different studies, we have people complete in one study a spatial reasoning task that mirrors some of the items that are used on a military readiness task of intellectual ability. In another study, we have people squeeze an exercise hand grip for as long as they can, and they can squeeze it for about 20% less time after they've just spent 10 minutes being asked to conceal their sexual orientation. Or in this other study, we had people respond to an obnoxious email, and then we had other people code how polite and restrained or how angry they were in turn. And people were able to write emails that were more polite, that showed more restraint, and when they did not just have to conceal their sexual orientation. We've known for a long time that after you do one of these tasks, we're bad at other related tasks that relate to self-control, but we haven't really known why. So a second goal of this project was, in addition to just documenting that concealment has these negative effects, to really understand why that's the case. If employees feel pressured to conceal their identities, this might actually hurt workplace performance. So in other words, instead of thinking about some of these laws that have implications for the workplace, instead of just thinking about them through a moral lens, we might also think, is it the case that without workplace protections for people with concealable identities, is it actually hurting the productivity of the workforce more generally? It could be that maybe what's so draining and hard about these things, you could say, could be that it's so difficult to constantly monitor these impulses to quash, or it could be that it's just so difficult to actually change your behavior in the moment when you have to. So basically in our studies, we found that it's the former explanation. It's just the constant monitoring for impulses to quash that itself is so depleting.